I bring you greetings from Southeast Asia and in particular Malaysia. Thank you for your kind invitation, and please allow me to take you on a journey to Southeast Asia. The title of my paper is basically looking at sounds, languages, and rhythms and how a hybridized popular music form can play a big role in Christian identity formation. And I'm looking at 3 countries, Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore. Now, consider this fact. Christianity has made some, but actually very limited inroads in Southeast Asia. There's a very small percentage of Christians in Malaysia, that's 9.2%, in Thailand 1.2%, and in Cambodia 0.5%. And this really confirms this point that Christianity is a minority religion, particularly in Islamic and Buddhist majority countries. Why is this so? I was really very irked. It really bothered me a lot by this statement by Batu Lamai, a Malaysian Anglican theologian. And he says, the Malaysian church in general, due to the prevalence of Western influence, remains a potted plant and has not been replanted and rooted in national regional soil. And perhaps we've just made our pots bigger, but we've not done anything to root ourselves, we have done very little to root ourselves in national or regional soils. And so this paper is really a response to this very troubling potted plant analogy and really asks the question, how can the church be perceived not as a church in Southeast Asia, but as an authentic Southeast Asian church? Yeah. And so to move in that direction, 2 deficiencies I feel have to be addressed. And the first has to do really with a more robust contextual engagement. And so Edmund Chia says that, you know what, for the church to root itself and to plant itself in Southeast Asia, where there's just majority Buddhists and majority Muslims, then one of the things you have to do is to really engage with the context, to dialogue, to rub shoulders. I love this idea, rubbing shoulders with your multi-religious and multi-ethnic neighbors, and to address the pertinent contextual issues of injustice, poverty, and rising ethnic religious tensions. The second has to do with identity formation. And what is a Christian identity? Yeah. Hua Yong, a Malaysian theologian, suggests this concept. Kingdom identity consists of 2 elements. The first has to do with my identity as a Christian, yeah? But the second is something that has to do with your society, your culture, your community, your language, your different multiple groups of belonging. Yeah? And so he asserts that when either of these aspects of kingdom identity is weakened, the church's missional engagement is weakened. And it is my observation that minority Christians often possess a very strong faith and global church identity. They have to in order to survive, yeah? But really have an ambiguous one. Let me give you an example. I, Sooi Ling Tan, is a Christian. I'm proud to say I'm a Christian. Honestly, I cannot say that I'm a Malaysian. I mean, Amos says it so, smoothly, I'm Malaysian and American, But it is very difficult for me to say I'm Malaysian because the country has taken away opportunities from me. The country has regarded me as a second-class citizen. The country has denied me full religious rights. The country has imposed itself on me, how I think and who I am. It is hard to say I'm a Christian. And so the Christian national identity is something that has interested me a lot. A bit about Southeast Asia. It consists of 7 separate countries, but as a region, they share common borders, common challenges, common experiences. And the first is the rise of new or reformed nation states after independence from the colonial powers. So some are new nations like Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia. We've existed since the 1950s, so we're very young. Others have long histories, Thailand, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Cambodia, but they have reconfigured politically and geographically. And so for all of these new nations, national identity formation is very critical for unity, for survival, for stability, and for progress. Okay. The next thing is, in this region, ethnicity, religion, politics, and economics are inseparable. All right? In Malaysia, to be an ethnic Malay means you're automatically a Muslim, and you can't get out of it, okay? If you want to get out of it, you go to jail. Buddhism is one of the 3 identity markers for Thais and Cambodians. The third area is that of globalization. The global capitalist economy has caused great economic inequality through unfair distribution of gains. So the rich get richer and the poor gets poorer. In terms of identity, encounters and interactions now have produced a new type of person. And all of us in Asia have multiple identities and multiple belongings, right? So global Christian culture has also reached Asian shores, particularly with contemporary worship songs becoming the staple worship music genre in Asia. And so where do we go with this? How do we explore music and the arts in national and Christian national identity formation? And how do we use the music and the arts to express contextual concerns? Okay. All right, let's move on to Malaysia. Welcome to my country. At the heart of the national identity dilemma in Malaysia is this question. Okay, who decides what are the elements of national identity, right? In Malaysia, it is decided by a Malay Islamic privileged class that controls the politics, religion, economic and cultural affairs of the country. And so the national cultural policy is pro-Islamic and pro-Malay. So to be a Malaysian means I have to use Islamic music or have to get involved with Malay music. This is problematic as it runs counter to a vision of an inclusive and egalitarian multicultural society that Malaysia outwardly projects. Okay? But you know what? This doesn't stop musicians, okay? Musicians really don't care what the national cultural policy is. They have their own vision, right? And so they envision different things, yeah? And they envision alternatives of a more integrated and egalitarian Malaysia. And here is an example of Hans Percussion, a percussion performance group that began with one single Chinese identity. They used the shigu drums, you know, the huge drums that you see people playing. And then they later included the tablas from the Indian community, the Malay drums from the Malay community, and on top of that, the gamelan. And so Chan, one of the ethnomusicologists, he surmises this. He said, incorporating these musical elements allows Hans Percussion to experiment and explore their multiple identities as Malaysian, Chinese, modern, and cosmopolitan citizens through continuous experimentation with unconventional sounds and movements. Let's move on to the Southeast Asian Games that just happened. This just happened last year, and there's a 25-minute segment, Kita Serumpun, that was performed during the opening ceremony. Now, the musical director for Kita Serumpun was Michael Verpen, a Christian and a very prominent Malaysian jazz musician. So that's how I get the inside stories, yeah? And he said this over coffee. He was given 3 key performance indicators to say, so you are to create a musical performance that represents Malaysia, number 1, as a modern and progressive nation. Okay, so modern, progressive. Number 2, culturally diverse with a rich history. And number 3, create a distinct Malaysian sound. And he says, a distinct Malaysian sound, what is that? It's never been heard of, you know? And so Verpen explained that keeping those indicators in mind, he chose the genre of Western popular film music. He says, think John Williams. But to add, and he says, this conveys a sense of overarching grandeur, and it's music Malaysians are familiar with. But to add the local flavor, he says, upon the bed of these ideas, you fuse melodic riffs that are peculiar to Malaysia, such as melodies using the pentatonic scale, and commingle that with Malaysian ethnic instruments. And it is the way the sounds fuse. It's like curry, he says. It's like curry, the different spices. And it's the way it fuses that make it modern, grand, and quintessentially Malaysian. So Kita Serumpun takes us through 4 acts. It begins with the arrival of the presence of the original peoples of Malaysia, then the coming in of different ethnic groups, bringing in their musical traditions, and the formation of a nation. But it culminates in something that is really an explosion of colors and movements. And everyone comes together, all the different ethnic groups in Malaysia, and it's just a lot, okay, to Joget. Joget is a social popular dance, and he says this, for me, the Joget is a pure Malaysian sound and movement. It is a synthesis of the Portuguese folk dance and the Malay dancing style. But today, it has evolved, okay? So the sounds have fused and the movements have fused to become a very distinct dance form of its own, enjoyed by many Malaysian communities. Now, in this Joget, the orchestration accompanying it was a remake of a hugely popular Malaysian, very iconic song called Sinaran, Ray or Illumination. So this song was reharmonized, rescored, and performed by a large Western orchestra with ethnic instruments interfacing and rhythmically driven by the interlocking rhythms of the Malay percussion instruments. Shall we look at it?
And the silver bunga brought out again, symbolizing yet another form of respect and pride towards the nature of Malaysia.
So here you have the fusion and the blending together of sounds with very strong visuals, lights, dance, performances. The beauty of it is all the ethnicities have come together in one common space. And this really symbolizes Malaysia. It was very touching for me. Verpen concludes, Kita Serumpun was a rendition of where I thought it, which is Malaysian identity, was in 2017. What really stands out in this move is a move from multiculturality to interculturality, where there is an inclusive intermingling of various cultures in a very ethnically polarized nation. Music subversively gives space for musicians across divides to negotiate, construct, and enact their alternate visions of Malaysian identity. So what are the Christians doing? The task of developing the Malaysian in Christian Malaysian identity has its challenges, but let me draw out 2 examples. And the first is the Malaysian gospel music that was formed in 2011. And this group really helps promote Malaysian songwriters. They develop their own songs, they produce their records, and they have concerts. And the second is very interesting is by Hezekiah Asim, who is a sape player from the Klabit Lumbawang Highlands. This necklace is from that area, right up in the highlands. And he blends the sounds of the sape, the Western instruments, Sabah Sarawak traditional instruments, and he reworks the hymns and he creates new songs. So his is really interesting. And so I have a video clip of both these groups. Now, United, the Malaysian gospel music is very, very new in this, and they've just entered into this conversation as early as February of this year. And so that's how I connected with them. And so this is what they envision and imagine.
This is our song, this is our sound, this is our heartbeat of Malaysian praise. United as one, united in sound, let the pulse of our worship be our identity.
So this is in the Malay language. And the dances are from the indigenous peoples of Malaysia. And the second one is Hezekiah. Very interesting. Think rainforest. So let me make 3 observations with this. And the first is the use of popular music. That can never be denied. But you know what? There are variants of popular music in Asia. So there's Taiwanese pop. Yeah. Pop, yeah, they call it. Indonesian pop. Really different. Tamil pop. Oh, man. Okay. And these are used, you know. I mean, it's just part and parcel of our repertoire. Yeah. The second thing is that we have seen how to express Malaysian the local elements are introduced. So MGM music leans towards, let's say there's a spectrum of local and global. They lean very much on the global. So he says, Patrick Leong, who wrote this, he says, it's a rhythm and blues piece, but he incorporates the sounds of traditional instruments and uses multilingual vocals. And he says, with that, the past fuses with the present. Hezekiah Asim is different, right? He uses a more local tone. The melody uses a sape pentatonic scale. You can hear the pentatonic scale. There's a continuous ostinato, the drone sound, done by one sape player. And it's in duple meter. The 2 other sapes will alternate the melodic accompaniment with an abundance of ornaments. And the dance is gentle. Beautiful. The drums and keyboards are there, but they're just at the back. Yeah. The third thing we see is that the introduction of multiple languages. And so in summary, let me say this for Malaysia. Malaysian Christian artists have really begun exploring the construction of an elusive Malaysian sound in Christian music in 3 ways. First, by using the languages of the Malaysian peoples. Second, by blending contemporary musical sounds with local ones. And number 3, holding up unity, united, as an important ingredient in an ethnically polarized nation. Let's move on to Thailand. For Thailand, things are slightly different. I wanted to really explore the concept of Thainess. And I want to introduce this, that Thailand's national identity is really characterized by the continuity between Thai traditional and Western global influences. So for a Thai, from birth to death, every Thai has been inculcated in this ideology that you belong to a nation, a religion, which is Buddhism, and your king. Yeah, but this triad of markers have really been unsettled with the national shifts in 1932. Thailand is only known as Thailand since 1932. Before that, it was Siam. The king no longer held absolute power. Buddhism has new rivals in Islam down south and Christianity, and the country has embraced different ethno-linguistic tribes in North and Northeast Thailand. And Thailand's modernization agenda says, come, global influence, come. And so there is this constant dialectic between the old and the new, and this is the Thai experience. Now, Thai music represents that very well. Now, in popular music, there are two main subgenres. Playing luktong, which is more country music, and playing string, which is more urban music. Now, luktong, because it is tied to the folk music and is often considered more authentic than string. Now, string includes Western, has actually embraced the styles and the fashion and the musical singing of the West. And so this brings us to the question of authenticity. What makes music authentic? Yeah. And that's really a great question. What makes it not authentic? Yeah. And Connell and Gibson gives us this very interesting assertion. Authenticity is judged by perception. I perceive this as authentic. I perceive this as not authentic. It is socially constructed, and it involves element of tradition, but is constructed in relation to how continuity and change are perceived. So authenticity doesn't mean I'm rooted just in the past, but I am engaging with this continuity and the change. And luktong music really does that really very well. Some of the pop stars, such as Bert Thongchai McIntyre, in his album, he has this album, he does like tons of pop music, and then he comes up with this chut rap card, and he says, okay, let's use pop, rap, techno, but he blends in, the vocals from the Thai regional dialects, and then uses more lam, yeah? And then he wears Western hip-hop fashion, and he performs rap, but then he manages to be luktong. How does he do that? And one of the scholars say, this is really authentic Thai music, because it is Thai, but it borrows from the West. Another singer, and her music is really great, Rasmi Wairana from Northeast Thailand. She integrates Western jazz, blues, rock, pop with traditional Isan instruments and the Morlam luktong style. Her lyrics are very contextual. They speak on social issues. Her song Little Girl describes how difficult it is for Isan children to get a good education because they live in such a remote area. And so these luktong musicians have really imagined and represented Thainess in their music by combining musical elements to reflect a history and a tradition and their place in the global world. Now, how about Thainess in Christian music? Now, one of my Demon Doctor Ministry students conducted a survey of the 10 most frequently sung praise and worship songs in Acts of Christ Church in Bangkok, a Pentecostal, evangelical, very new church with 400 members, very urban church. And she says, 7 out of the 10 songs are written and sung by Australian, British, and American contemporary worship music artists. The other 3 by local composers, but in the same style. And so musically, you say, oh, there's no Thainess in this, yeah? But let me suggest that the contextual elements really lie in the lyrical content of the songs. The themes in the songs encapsulate the Christian Thai experience of struggle. There is struggle against the hegemony of Buddhism, powerful spirit forces that in their traditional religions, secularism, civil conflict, and the experience of social economic inequality. And so the themes like Jesus and God really reigns and is all-powerful rings out very, very clearly. Now, musically, Luk Thung also can be found in the music systems of the Morlam Luk Thung songs. Yeah. Now, Thyness in Morlam Luk Thung songs, they are very popular among the working class of Thais living in urban cities and in the rural areas. Now, the problem is that Luk Thung is always considered very low class. Okay? So it's unsophisticated. And we in Bangkok, we are very sophisticated. All right, so it's very hard to use these songs, yeah? But it does happen, and there are some examples of it. And so let me give you an example of two clips. And the first is a hymn of the Philippines produced by Heart Productions. And it is a more Thai folk musical style, and it's considered a Thai hymn. And the second is an upbeat celebratory song, which I'm sure Dr. Roberta King will get up and dance.
Are you daring me?
Yeah. Right, and so you find that the church in Thailand has really embraced their Thyness, very often through their lyrics and the use of the Morlam Luk Thung style music. Thank you for staying with me in this journey, and let's move on to Cambodia. Cambodia's concerns are strikingly different. It's a land that has been devastated from the Khmer Rouge genocide. And when the genocide ended, the poignant lament song O Nom Pen blared over the loudspeaker in 1978, signaling the end of 3 years, 8 months, and 20 days of the Khmer Rouge rule and of musical silence. 90% of the musicians died during that time. And this lament reflects music's unique ability to express grief and loss so deep beyond words to describe. But it also galvanizes Cambodians to hope, to rebuild, by drawing from their historical heritage. Popular music in Cambodia is used in several ways, and the first is that it is a nationalistic tool. So when Cambodia achieved independence from the French, Prince Norodom Sihanouk really pursued a modernization program, and music was used as a post-colonial reaffirmation of national identity and a nationalistic reminder that Cambodia had deep cultural roots, but hey, I'm prepared to modernize ourselves along with Western nations. And so he said, come, French and Anglo-American musical influences were welcome, and this led to a very golden age of Cambodian popular music. Of course, that was very much cut down by the Khmer Rouge. The second thing that Linda Safan talks about is this. She says, Cambodian popular singers, musicians, and composers have a remarkable capacity to innovate, to create musical hybrids. They draw from the best of all genres, local and non-local, and they craft what she calls a hybrid culture. And so there is this ingenuity, there's this flexibility. In the 1960s, their rock music was considered rock brought in from America, but with a Cambodian twist, whatever that means. And as the country grew in confidence at the turn of the millennium, musicians began to step out of the box to create. I Am Original is one such movement. We find bands like Small World, Small Band now composing new melodies and resurrecting the art of storytelling, right? The pop and rap duo Khmer Khmer, young Cambodians employ a mix of traditional instruments underneath R&B and hip-hop vocals. Their songs such as My Way and Life of Orphans address the social issues of today's Cambodia and are sung with a mix of Khmer and English because there's a large Cambodian group of people in America, and many of them have gone back bringing this music with them. Now, for the church, what is happening? There are two features of Christianity that I like to bring up. First is Christians are a small minority, I've said that, but there are reports of recent growth. Yeah. Second, Cambodia has a very young population with 68.5% under the age of 35 in 2013, born after the Khmer Rouge. When many Christians will be born after the Khmer Rouge, many in the older generation have either migrated or have been killed. And so the older Christians will be singing hymns, right? But the younger Christians, according to Nan Chanta, another one of our students, she says the young generation prefer Christian contemporary worship songs. Nan is a very interesting person. She was converted as a teenager, moved to Phnom Penh to pursue her studies, university studies, and with a group of 7 friends, she planted churches. She started planting churches. And she talks about one of her favorite songs, which is Pray for Cambodia. Now, the song adopts a musical style that is contemporary worship music, but I really feel that when you listen to it, it retains a Khmer authenticity through the distinct rhythm and sounds of the Khmer language. Okay, we could never sing it that way. Yeah, the Khmer language is very musical and the tones are really beautiful, the phonetics itself, right? And so the lyrics really express the explicit struggles and difficulties in a society that is grappling with issues of poverty, human trafficking, injustice, and continual simmering conflict. But the Christians are praying for this nation that we can reach out to something that is more transcendent than what we see every day. Now, a second example is actually Epic Arts. Epic Arts is an international inclusive arts organization based in Cambodia, but registered in the UK. And it uses inclusive arts for those with and without disabilities to participate in their education, creative arts, community, and social programs. It carries the message, every person counts. In musical performances, empowerment takes place, dignity is restored. There's a practice of acceptance, so they do it both together, and there is equality, providing a space for healing, restoration, and hope. This one of their interesting performances is called Come Back Brighter and traces the turbulent Cambodian journey through time by using theater, dance, and video. Here's the trailer.
In 1965, my country was just like yours. Khmer people were full of hope and the future looked bright. A word they would not know for very long. No family, no hospital, no school, no books, no learning, no music, no expression of love, only work and death. The dawn of a new age, year 0.
This performance really represents the fine spirit of a new Cambodia. It is a very difficult nation. The people go through a lot of difficulties there. But it tells us visually and experientially that disabilities do not hamper capabilities. One can arise above any challenge. Ork Savi, a member of the troupe, concludes, "This is a show about our history, our art, and our identity." Cambodia is rediscovering who it is again. Its people are discovering their soul, and the arts are thriving. So in conclusion, I have provided snapshots of how music and the arts can contribute to a greater engagement with local contexts and move people towards identity formation in the countries of Malaysia, Thailand, and Cambodia. Epic arts show us the way forward to engage with communities, literally, that have experienced loss, a loss of dignity and hope. MGM Hezekiah's music in Malaysia helps Christian Malaysians understand who they are in Christ and also who they are as a Malaysian. Music and the arts help negotiate, construct, express shifting and multiple identities that all of us in this room actually have and possess. And they negotiate tradition and innovation, and it's all right, you know? And so they are able to choose the best elements from the local and non-local, the old and the new, fuse these sounds and create a new hybrid sound. How exciting can that be? This is a sound that I feel the church in Southeast Asia needs to hear, one that affirms their local national identity and also their Christian belonging. And in pursuit of that, let me recommend that the church need to really expand their musical repertoire to include songs written in local languages, in local music styles, write lyrics that are strong theologically and contextually, and be prepared to create and to innovate. Finally, I am Sooi Ling. I'm proud to be a Christian, and I hope that one day I will be able to say, honestly, I'm proud to be a Malaysian. Thank you very much.
Mi ye te sheni do